Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. And today's episode is One Piece East Blue Saga, Warship Island Arc, Episode 61, Angry Finale, Cross the Red Line. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happens in the episode. So, in this episode, things come to an end on Warship Island. They have a last confrontation, well, almost last confrontation with Eric, leaving the island to be peaceful. They get rid of him for the Islanders. The Islanders come out and are like, wow, the legends were real. Oh my goodness. And Apis makes a resolution to protect the island and the dragons forever and ever, because even though she won't see them come back as adults to the island again, her kids' would, essentially. So basically she wants to pass everything on to her descendants to make sure that the island remains protected for the 1,000 years until the dragons return, and that's her resolution. The crew then leave to head toward the Grand Line, and we see them re-enter stormy waters as they head towards Reverse Mountain, which is a mountain that has the strongest currents from all four seas, making the stream go upward, and then upon reaching the top, it then goes downwards into the Grand Line, and that is how they will enter. However, because the current is so strong, the ship starts to kind of go off course, and they have just a very narrow opening that they can get into. And as they're heading towards the opening, the current is so strong that it ends up breaking their rudder steer, which leaves them almost crashing into the walls. But Luffy makes himself a balloon, which sets the ship back onto the correct course, and they start heading up the mountain as they all kind of internally reflect on what dreams they are going to be achieving in the Grand Line. Eric then makes one last appearance that if he can't have the Dragonite, then he's at least going to get the 30 million bounty that is on Luffy's head, and threatens them again, but Luffy distracts him by saying, oh look, there's a millennial dragon, and then she trips him and he falls into the water. As he cannot swim due to the devil fruit, the assumption is that he is not going to be bothering them again, and as he does not reappear within the episodes that are upcoming at any point, we can assume he met his end there. We then have them reaching the top of the mountain and beginning the decline, but that is the cliffhanger that we leave the episode on, without them reaching the Grand Line, but being on the descent of Reverse Mountain towards the Grand Line. So now that we've been reminded about what happens in this episode, we will now rank the episode. As always, we'll start with the mostly objective ranking list, followed by the personal ranking list. So, first off, I did not consider Eric's death a development because it is not fully confirmed that he is in fact dead. It's heavily implied and assumed, given that he has a devil fruit, can't swim, and he has been basically thrown into the water on the Reverse Mountain, which people do not go to frequently, so chances of him being saved or rescued pretty much non-existent. So we can assume he's dead, but though he is presumed dead, it is not confirmed, therefore I'm not giving points for it. I'm just honorably mentioning that. But what I am giving points for is that they have the single arc main character growth, which Eric reveals another attack. When he tries to take the Dragonite, Luffy protects Apis and the dragons by fighting Eric, and Eric uses Kamakama Wind Slash Rapid Fire, which is new. That is worth 2 points. Then we have the character growth from Apis, who has now found her dream and her path to the future. So more of like an emotional growth rather than like a power growth, and that is, of course, Apis deciding to protect the nest and pass on the knowledge to future generations so that her kids can, so on and so forth, can see the dragons and protect them when they're back 1,000 years later. bringing us to 4. Then we have another 2 for our resolved battle, which was Eric versus Luffy versus Nami, because Nami is ultimately the one who killed him. Um, also worth 2 points. That brings us to 6. Then we have positive 4 points for the world building aspect, which brings us up to 10. And the world building is, of course, the explanation of Reverse Mountain being the entrance, and that it works by the currents of each of the strong seas, being so strong that they go up the mountain. So basically in reverse, as typically water flows down, this causes it to flow up. And then once you get up to the top of the mountain, the currents all collide, and then the water goes downwards into the Grand Line, allowing ships to enter. And last but not least, we have a negative, and that, of course, is Nami being a murderer. And I mean, it's not like Eric wasn't a villain, and obviously they are pirates, and that is just the nature of the world and how it works, that not every character can survive. Um, but murder's bad, so minus 2 points. I don't feel bad that Eric has been presumably drowned, but this is the objective list, and just objectively murder equals bad. So we take 2 points for that, leaving this as an 8 out of 10 episode. Bringing us now to our definitive list on the mostly objective ranking for this arc. And in first, we have the Holy Beast, Apis' Secret, and the Legendary Island. Second, Those Who Soar in the Open Skies, Revival of the Thousand-Year Legend. Third, Foreboding of a New Adventure, The Puzzling Girl Apis. 4, Angry Finale, Cross the Red Line. Fifth, we have Eric's Raid, Great Escape from Gunkin Island. Sixth, Duel in the Ruins, Strained Zoro vs. Eric. Seventh, Lone Island in a Distant Sea, The Legendary Lost Island. And then eighth, Luffy, Completely Surrounded, Admiral Nelson's Secret Plan. Personal ranking for this episode. I do like the resolution to Apis and her story. I also like that finally we didn't have to take points because this is now returning to the main story where we do go up Reverse Mountain. I do like the basically we've reached a big milestone in the series of them going up the mountain, heading into the Grand Line, and that is where most of the points came from, is that we've finally made this big milestone. We're finally reaching the end of the saga. Everybody's reconfirming their dreams. There's a little bit of action with or not action, but tension built with, will they be able to make it through this tiny little crack? Uh-oh, the rudder's broken. And then Luffy saving it, and then Eric's reappearance, rather than adding tension, I was kind of like, are we still dealing with this guy? Genuinely, like, I feel like we could have left him at Warship Island with Rue, with Apis, with Nelson, with all the other characters. Like, I didn't think he had to come back here, but apart from that, I do think that it ultimately was a good finale to this saga and to this arc, and that's why I decided to give it a 9. And with a 9 out of 10, that brings the definitive personal ranking for this arc to, in first, Those Who Soar in the Open Skies, Revival of the Thousand-Year Legend. Second, Angry Finale, Cross the Red Line, which was this episode. Third, Luffy Completely Surrounded, Admiral Nelson's Secret Plan. Fourth, Duel in the Ruins, Strained, Zoro vs. Eric. Fifth, Eric's Raid, Great Escape from Gunkin Island. Sixth, The Holy Beast, Apis' Secret and the Legendary Island. Seventh, Foreboding of a New Adventure, The Puzzling Girl Apis. And then in 8th place, Lone Island in a Distant Sea, The Legendary Lost Island. And that now brings us to our definitive ranking again for the arcs in the saga. All the arcs have been completed, the saga is over, and so our final listing on the mostly objective ranking has Romance Dawn arc in first at 86.67%, followed by Arlong Park arc at 76.67, Logtown arc at 76.67 as well. Logtown arc is of course in second because when they have the same score, they're just ranked in order. Orangetown arc at 76%, Baretti arc 68.33%, Syrup Village arc at 64%. Warship Island arc ended with a final score of 51 out of 80, which gave it a score of 63.75%, putting it in 7th place. And then the Buggy's Side Story arc is in 8th place at 55%. On the personal ranking side, our definitive list has the Buggy's Side Story arc in 1st place with 90%. This arc, Warship Island arc, actually comes in 2nd. Final score for it was 68 out of a possible 80, giving it 85%. Then Arlong Park arc at 76%, Orangetown arc at 74%, Romance Dawn arc at 66.67%, Logtown arc at 61.67%, Baretti arc at 52.5%, and then the Syrup Village arc at 49%. So with the arc over, it's now time to determine how many points this arc earned for the series ranking to apply towards the saga's final score. And on the mostly objective ranking, we had 63 and change on the score, which gives us 4 points. And then on the personal ranking, we had score of 85 and change. No, just 85%, sorry, and that is worth 8 points. Which now bring us to that series ranking so far, and our East Blue Saga has its final score. So with additional 4 points, mostly objective ranking ended up being 45 out of 80 and ends with 56.25%. Then the personal ranking, we added 8 points, giving us 42 out of a possible 80, and that left us with 52.50% as the final score for our East Blue Saga. And with that, we have now rewatched and ranked One Piece East Blue Saga Warship Island Arc Episode 61, Angry Finale, Cross the Red Line. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode, which will also be the first of the next saga.